Welcome to the Nate KG Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring the nuances of jump rope, where I talk with jumpers of all skill levels, backgrounds, and fitness goals. In this episode, I have a chat with Stewart Isaacs at Jump Rope Stewart on Instagram. Stewart is one of the top-tier world champion jumpers with a massive amount of experience in the sport. In addition to jump rope, he's also pursuing a PhD in aeronautics and astronautics from MIT. Needless to say, Stewart brings a lot of great perspective to the table. So much so that we actually recorded over 3 hours of conversation. So I'll be splitting up our chat into 3 different parts, with this being the first of those 3. In this portion of our chat, we really dig into a lot of speed training detail, discussing how to make speed training more enjoyable, why most jumpers actually like speed training despite the difficulty, and some methods to get more out of your training without having significant mental fatigue. All of the show notes for this episode can be found over at natekg.com. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Stewart Isaacs. Stewart, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm pumped that you're here. I know we've spent some time connecting and scheduling this call, and I think that this is going to be quite the episode because we have a lot to get into. So let's start at the start here. Where are you in the world, and how did you first pick up a jump rope?
Sure. So I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is my hometown. And I first started jump rope when I was 5 years old. I was in an elementary school, and we happened to have a jump rope team there. And so my sister was very interested in joining the jump rope team, and we decided we would try out together. We tried out. Well, first we trained all summer to prepare for the tryouts, and then we tried out. We made it onto the team, and I joined the team known as the Cincinnati Rope and Rockets. And so that was in 2001.
2001. So it's been a good couple decades for you jumping for that long. That's what's up.
Yeah, I'm going on 20 years.
That is really amazing, man. So what were those tryouts like that you were training for all summer?
You know, I think so. Our coach at the time was Miss Emerson, Christine Emerson, and my impression of tryouts is, not only seeing if jumpers are going to, pick up the skills. So like we're learning skills and we're seeing if you can pick them up, but also just, can you pay attention? You have 5-year-olds, you have to have a certain amount of attention level to be on a jump rope team, right? If you can't manage a bunch of kids that aren't paying attention. So
right.
That's also a big part of it. And then of course, she made sure that we had, adequate grades to stay on the team, because part of, the sport back then is a lot of performances for jump rope for heart. So we would go and skip school days to perform. So if your grades aren't adequate, then you can't really be on the team because you can't afford to miss school.
How awesome was that too? Because I did the same thing where I would be able to skip a couple hours to go do a performance during school. And it was like the coolest thing ever that nobody else understood.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool. And I kind of felt like, especially when I started competing pretty seriously, it was almost like jump rope part of my life was this alter ego, whereas I'm just this regular school person, but then I get to put on my routine, my, uniform, and pick up my ropes and go perform for a lot of students, right? We'd have 3 or 4 performances in one day, and there'd be a lot of students that are very excited. As a young person, it felt really, really cool.
What did the people around you in school, the people that knew you, that you saw every day, what did they think about your jumping?
Yeah. I think because the jump rope team was a very visible part of the school, because the gym teacher was also the jump rope coach. Most people knew of the Rope and Rockets, and so I don't think they thought anything, strange of it. And even when I got into junior high and high school, a lot of my peers had gone to school with me in elementary school, and by that point, I was pretty good. So I was traveling and competing at the world level. And so no one really, I think for a lot of boys in particular, it can be a vector for bullying, but I didn't experience that as much in my experience.
Well, I mean, although to be fair, I think probably by the time you got to high school, you were throwing down, I would imagine, quads and some flips and some really strong handstand push-up skills. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because that'll change it a bit. That was one of the things that I got. It's funny, you bringing that up has kind of reminded me of that part of my journey too, where I would work out in a gym that was kind of like a hometown gym. It wasn't a chain or anything, but the community there was really strong. And it's funny how the people walking by my friends knew me. My friends were like, yeah, whatever, he's a jump rope guy. But these other people at the gym saw it differently because it was powerful. So,
Hmm.
so you're doing jump rope. Did you ever play with or test out different forms of sport, or did you stick to jump rope?
Oh no, I did other sports as well. So I tried basketball, hated it. Tried soccer, was very bad at that. I'll say that I'm pretty bad at ball sports in general. I don't think I've ever scored a point in an official game ever. um, but I think this does get kind of to the perception of jump rope, but I got a lot of encouragement from my father to play football. And so even though I didn't particularly like football, I played football from junior high all the way into high school. I think I might have missed one season. And so I did that as well. And um, I think that's a different conversation, but that's I did do that, and then I did track and field as well. I actually like track
Mm.
because I felt like kind of like jump rope. As long as you work really hard, you start to see the results, and I like that.
I've looked into your history prior to this call, and I've done a little bit of research, and I'm curious if the reason why you were interested in track more than the other sports, it seems like because of your history with all that you've accomplished in schooling, which we'll get to in a bit, and your speed scores and jump rope. Is it that track had this like clear, defined goal that the only thing it took was just hitting the track and then you versus you every day against that new score, that new time? Is that what was interesting for you?
That's definitely a part of it, right? Sports like basketball and football, it's you versus some opponent,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas a sport like jump rope is very internally focused, where it's like you versus yourself. Are you getting better or worse? Or, what is your absolute limit? And I do think track lends itself better to that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the other reasons is that when I was a sophomore, that was the year I missed the football season. It was actually my track coach who was also my math teacher, and so we spent that entire off season, that entire like winter, just like running and doing math problems at the same time for like an hour, right? And so I still don't know how to articulate it best, but I do think there is something to say about the mindset of just like pushing yourself to your absolute limits that lends well to like both track and jump rope, but also some of the academic stuff as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Pushing yourself to the limit. I
Hmm.
looked at a lot of different video pieces you've done in different places, both for school and for jump rope and the Disney Channel, and and you've talked a lot about this pairing of jump rope and we can extend that to be athletics for the sake of what we're talking about now, and your studies and this idea of pushing yourself to that threshold and to that limit. Where does that come from? Because that is such, it seems to be, now that we're talking about it, now that I've heard you speak about it in several other places, it seems to be a consistent theme for you.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I know that
Um.
that wasn't one of the questions we had originally planned on, but as tends to happen on here, I'm kind of curious now that I'm seeing it seems to be somewhat of a pattern.
Yeah, definitely. It is, and I think that's kind of an important part of my story. I used to think that my experience with the sport of jump rope brought that out of me in a way where because jump rope is so hard, right? It takes a lot of time to develop your skills. It takes a lot of consistent and hard effort to like make the progress you want. But when you do it, it pays out. I'm realizing now that I'm a little older, I think a more accurate way to look at it is probably just my personality, right? I like to try and improve myself as much as I can. And I think jump rope was just a sport that cultivated that aspect that was innate in me, and allowed me to like see success in like picking up on this aspect of myself. And then later in my career, academics were, kind of in the same way allow me to experience success just because of, who I am. But I do think jump rope cultivates that within myself. I'm not sure what I'll be like today had I not been involved with the sport.
What was it about those other sports that you didn't like? Was it what we're talking about right now, like this idea of pushing to a threshold was missing, or was it something else?
Part of it is just like cultural. It's like I get into the game. It's just like, well, first off, I don't understand the rules of this, so
Well,
I'm
that'll
playing
do
this
it.
game. It's like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And even like just being in pickup basketball. I mean, I was, when I was in Ghana this past year, and we were just kind of shooting hoops, and I shoot the hoop and I airball it, and it's like, okay, what happens now? Do I like pick up the ball and shoot again, or does someone else pick it up? Like, I'm just really confused. Like, I don't, I don't know how to do this. And so I just never felt encouraged enough to work through that discomfort to get good at other sports like that.
Mm,
It's not like there was a bunch of people in my household or in my family who were like, Stewart, soccer is super important to us. Let's, learn it. Or, basketball super important. Let's learn it. But with jump rope, I mean, even before I joined the team, right? Like right, me and my sister were training outside just to. Get better for the tryout.
mm-hmm.
This is something that I can get better at without necessarily mastering the culture around it or the rule set. I can just pick up a rope and do it.
Mm-hmm. That's a very big distinction. Let's that's interesting. Let's transition a little bit into school, because you have accomplished, in my mind, and I think many people's minds, a tremendous amount. So are you currently pursuing a PhD in aeronautics and astronautics?
Yes,
And that's from MIT?
correct.
Sweet. Yeah, no big deal. Just a, small little PhD from MIT, right? That's pretty amazing, man. I
Thank you.
That process, um, going through engineering, I've
Hmm.
spoken to several jumpers who have an engineering background, Lee Reisig being one of them.
Hmm.
And do you see any similarities or any patterns that repeat themselves between, engineering and jump rope?
Yeah, absolutely. Jump rope's interesting because you have these foundational skill sets, right? These foundational crosses, these foundational movements, such as like side swings or even power skills like frogs, and then releases. And then you have this infinite amount of combinations of these fundamental skills to create new sets of skills. And so in that way, it's like engineering because engineering is based in this foundation of physics, and once you understand the physics, then you can manipulate the world around you to get your desired outcome. That's really what engineering is about. You use whatever you have around you and your understanding of physics to create some outcome. And I think in a lot of ways that translates well into the same way jump rope works, right? I want some quad that's going to look really cool. Here are some of my foundational crosses or movements. How can I put them together in a way that meets that goal?
How do you approach putting sequences together? Because as we're talking about, these variables and constructing them into a system, in that example of, how do I make this really cool looking quad, how do you go about creating sequences? And let's stick on quads just for the sake of, like, having a concrete example. But how do you go about creating a sequence of quads? And let's leave that as kind of part A, like how you like approach it. But then part B of that question is, how do you approach that sequence now as somebody who has so much experience with different combinations? How do you not end up repeating the same thing over again? And the reason I'm asking this is because
Hmm.
in my own mind, like, I have done different quad combos before, but it at this point for me, it takes a lot of cognitive effort to break my normal system of quads and reshape it to something new. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Um, yeah. So let me start with part A. I
Yeah.
think I think that let's say I'm going to make an Instagram video, or I guess the thing that's coming to mind right now is the jump rope games competition
Yeah.
where there was
Hmm.
the multiple under thunder, and I was like, oh, I'll probably do this because doing power on concrete hurts. And
Yeah,
so
that's so true.
yeah, it's not that fun. I think for me, I'll usually have in mind one or two quad skills that I think I really want to do, right? So maybe I just learned some elephant TJ quad and it's like that needs to go in there somehow. And so for me, it's really just putting together stuff around it that allow me to one complete the skill, but then also make it look cool in sequence. And I also have a bias for spinning. I love spinning when I do quads as well. And so I'm like throwing that element and trying to make like work it in such that it just feels good. Um, as long as I hit those like one or two quads that I really like, what goes around it is less important to me as long as it feels good and is smooth. And so I think part B of the question was, with the experience I have now, what does that look like? I had an experience when I was pretty young. I think maybe I was in fifth or sixth grade. I'm not sure. But, I put together all these quad skills that I could do at the time. I put them into like my routine. I went to compete the routine, completely bombed it, right? I couldn't get it done. And I remember before nationals, Miss Emerson actually brought in this person from the Rapid Ropers from Indiana to help us out. He was in Cincinnati at the time. And he was telling me, he's like, Stewart, this is a good sequence, but like you can't do it. you know, you might need to lower the level a little bit so you can get it done. And I didn't listen. I bombed it. And so the lesson from that was that a lot of times throwing these quads back to back to back is actually really hard. And so one of the things I do is like, once I have my centerpiece skills, the skills the skills that go around it aren't as important. And so if I need to do a triple, that's fine. Or if I do a triple while moving or spinning, that's fine too, because at the end of the day, it's still going to look good. And I think I really tried to take that mindset and internalize it for this multiple under thunder thing, which I'm very proud to say I won that.
Nice
And I
job.
think it came out much better than I thought it would because, I don't think I was really feeling particularly strong that day. And I wasn't trying to do like my hardest quads possible. I just wanted to put something together that looked and felt good. And I think I succeeded there.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that because the to contrast that a little bit for
Hmm.
context, you're talking about you're picking a few of the skills that you like to do and then working around that. A lot of times when I've approached doing a quad combo, and especially now, I think of it relatively linearly. Do this skill, then what's the hardest skill that I can put next to that, and then the hardest skill that can come after that one, and so forth. So it's interesting to hear that you pick a few skills and then build around that. That's pretty cool. Let's back up a little bit and let's go to when would you say in competitive jump rope you started to hit um, what we can call a high level of jumping, however you want to describe that, and we can also qualify that high level of jumping with success at competition. When would you say that was?
I think the first time I made it to Grand Nationals, I think I was probably in fourth or fifth grade. Um, so probably when I was around 9.
That is very early. Wow. What I was 100% not expecting that to be your answer. What events was that for?
So that was in speed, and
Okay.
and I think it's important to say that I when I was first getting good at jump rope, I was a speed person
Hmm.
entirely. Like I
Hmm.
don't think I would consider myself good at freestyle until much later.
Okay, that makes I was yeah that makes sense because I was thinking freestyle focused. So not that speed's any less.
Oh no,
Speed is
it's fine.
much yeah. If anything, I think speed might be a little bit more difficult just because the discipline that's required to do well in speed is, in my mind, a different type of discipline than what it takes to get better at freestyle because freestyle has that element of fun and flow to it. And I
Hmm.
don't think that speed, I mean, you can argue that you can hit a pace that feels pretty good, but when you're really trying to pass that threshold like you're talking about,
Hmm.
that requires something else. So I'm curious as you're progressing in speed, which if you're doing it that early, a lot of this makes a lot more sense. But I kind of want to pair that up um with the work you've done professionally because
Hmm.
you're on this very sophisticated engineering track. At what point do you start to match those up? Because I know you've spoken a lot about matching your fitness and your jumping rope with your work in order to complement each other. At what point do you think those converge?
Hmm. Well, I'm gonna get to that point as well, but let me back up a little bit because I do think that um, the way people train speed can be fun. And if you, and I think it makes sense that you'll have jumpers who get very good at speed very young. So if you think about someone like Tori, I mean, she was hitting around 500 around the age of 12, right? You
500
think
in
about,
3 minute?
yeah, in 3 minute. So that's like 1,000 jumps, counting both feet. Or you think about, I think the current, I would consider him the fastest person ever. He's from China. What is this man's name?
Is this the person that got 120 in 30 seconds or somewhere around
Yeah, I
there?
think it's is it Sen Jiaolin
You
or
know, I actually don't know the name, but I have seen the video, and it is incredibly impressive to hit that
oh my
score.
gosh, dude's a monster. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, there's that video, the viral video of him going against like three different, jumpers in 3 minutes and beating them all. like,
Yeah, that is.
like 1 minute intervals. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And I think he was like less than 10 at the time he's doing that video, right? And so there's like a height to power ratio that you can
Yeah.
optimize as
Well,
a kid. But
let's dig into this because this has been something that has honestly been blowing my mind because that level of athleticism, it honestly doesn't make sense to me right now. Like
yeah,
I just don't understand um how that is even possible, especially at a younger age. I want to, have you continue, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on all that.
well, I think that there is something to be said about, when typically younger people are a little shorter. And as we're seeing, the shorter the rope you can jump with, the faster you can go, right? That makes a lot of sense. You have less rope to pull around your body. You can pull around faster, given the same amount of like strength. Um, and so with that understanding, it does start to make sense that kids might be better. But also like, I think a lot of kids like the discipline of like just doing speed with consistency. I think for a lot of kids, I remember I was talking to, I don't know if it was Ridge or Vivian, because they were working with the kids in China, or I think it was China, or it might have been Hong Kong. But there was a trio of kids who were really really fast at double speed, like smashing world records. And again, this is a case where they're less than 10, um, and they love it. Like they can't wait to get into the gym and train speed. They just absolutely adore it. And so, something about, especially if you have like adult attention there and you're just kind of training them and with consistency and they can see the results that they get from doing it often, kids would just eat that up. And that's why they get so fast at it. It's because they actually enjoy it. And there's ways you can make the training more fun, right? I mean, obviously tracking your goals, you get some innate pleasure from like seeing yourself get better.
Right,
Um,
right.
I think the best jumpers jump to music
Mm-hmm.
or some type of rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
and that increases the enjoyment of it. Because at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy the process of doing speed, you won't get faster.
And you won't keep doing it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. Um, and so you also notice that most of the fastest jumpers are usually pretty good at freestyle. What like you think about like people who like smash world championships, Luke Boone, Tory Boggs, Shane Windsor.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who are really fast at speed and really good at freestyle, and that is not a coincidence. I think fundamentally, just the more times you jump, the more mastery you get over the rope.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people who are, put in the time to like jump over it 1,000 times, in one interval, I just get more familiar with the rope in a way that also improves their freestyle skills.
And the musculature develops so explosively too, because if you're
Hmm.
at that speed, and these scores, we're talking about a 3 per second or a 6 total jumps per second, plus speed. And in order to actually accomplish that, the time interval aside, to accomplish that pace requires so much rapid muscle activation, and it's very similar
Hmm.
to a sprint. And I think that kind of development in the body, it complements or also causes, I'm not sure if there is causation there, but I think it definitely complements, like you're saying, the freestyle, because now the jumper doesn't really have to worry as much about their ability to jump. That part
Yep.
has been developed so well. Now they can focus on their proficiency, which I think is part of what leads to that. You're talking a lot about, there's ways to do speed training for fun.
Mhm.
What are those methods?
I think, yeah, so, training with music is one. You don't actually need to do the actual events all that much, right? So when you're training track, you don't just, let's say you're running the 400, you're probably not going to just run 400s, 3 times a week for an entire season. You're
Mm-hmm.
mixing it up. You
Right.
might do some long distance training. You might also do some sprinting. You have to take that kind of training regimen and apply that to jump rope as well. And so I think the people in East Asia who are, very serious about speed, I remember I talked to the South Korean folks. They have like 5 different ropes at least, and they're training at this BPM with the long rope, and then they go to a higher BPM with a shorter rope, and they're training on and off for like 30 minutes at a time with different ropes, different speeds, different time intervals, all of that. And so if you're only doing the events, like if you're training for 3 minutes by doing a bunch of 3 minute and 5 minute, that might not be as effective as spicing it up with some other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, what we said before, you have to enjoy the consistency of it, and if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you won't get better.
You wrote an article that I saw you posted on Facebook a while ago about spending a break you had in school in Bermuda with the team there, and you talked about using a beaded rope during the speed training until basically you felt like your arms were going to fall off or catch on fire or both, basically, because doing beaded rope speed is brutal. Is that what you're talking about in terms of like you're doing different intervals, but the point of the interval is to test a different rope and a different stimulus, and you're just playing around with exactly how you're integrating these different tools? Is that what you're saying?
I think so a little bit. If I understand what you're saying, I think the point of training with the beaded rope, and to be honest, this is like a new thing to me. But from learning from the people in Australia as well as the
Mm-hmm.
people in South Korea, is that the purpose of the beater rope is to warm up your arms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of American speed training folks don't actually get over this. I wish I could draw it out, but like, I think runners talk about reaching that point where you've ran enough where you get really, really tired, but then
Mm-hmm.
after you get over the hump, it gets a little easier,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So with the beater rope, you're doing the same thing for your arms. You're actually getting your arms warm enough to have a real good speed session. And if
Mm.
you don't do that first, you won't actually get over the hump to get to the speed gains that you want in your session.
So I got you. So you're talking about hitting the lactic threshold to the point where your body is at its limit, and then once you've hit that, that's actually when you're ready to really
Exactly.
train. Okay.
Yes.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I've spent a lot of time researching periodization of medium endurance and short endurance sports. Track
Hmm.
being the easiest, obviously, to draw comparisons to. And I've talked with Selena Furman a lot about this, and we've gone back and forth discussing many different workouts, and many of the workouts that we've talked about I've tested, and they are brutal. Things similar to that, where you are doing. I think one of the ones that really sticks out for me, to your point, is using a beaded rope for a certain period of time. No, I'm sorry. It's about 30 seconds of really pushing on your speed. Like your pace is like at least a 80 to 90% pace. Then you've got a couple minutes, I think 2 to 5 minutes of kind of your baseline speed that you can maintain. There's different sets, so each set is a different length of time, and then the final 30 seconds of that round is as fast as you can possibly go. Point being that each different round you are using a beaded rope or a PVC or an actual wire rope, and
Hmm.
it not only is it brutal, but it definitely, what you're talking about in terms of hitting that lactic threshold and changing up the stimulus is very critical. And I've found in me personally, it does get you a lot farther and
Hmm.
really develops your understanding of how to work with speed. It also really pulls out all of your common issues like really quickly. Like
Yeah.
I find that my right foot clips the rope, and it's usually only my right foot that clips the rope. And it's oh man, I can think of so many speed practices where like, you know what I'm talking about, where like every 2 jumps you're clipping the
Yup.
rope, and you're like, you gotta be kidding me.
I just want to scream. I want to cry.
Yeah, exactly. How do you
It's terrible.
push through those days where that happens to you?
I think I just give up on those days. I was like, let me do something else. Like,
That's
look,
the best
there's so many
answer.
other things I can train right now. This is just not clicking for whatever reason, and let me move on.
So on the days where it doesn't click, you do literally just you push it to the side for the day, and then you just return to it later.
Yeah, I think so. It's like sometimes I'm like, oh, today's the day I'm gonna focus on my flips, and I go out and my legs are just not there. And like sometimes I can warm up and get to a point where I can do that. And then sometimes it's like, wow, today's not it. All right, so today's gonna be a rope manipulation day,
Mm,
or something
yeah,
else.
yeah.
Um, because like there's so many facets of the sport. I feel like there's always things to work on, and so if something's not clicking, it's like whatever. On to the next.
What was your best speed year in
Oh,
competition?
gosh. That was probably. Did I compete last year? Last year was 2018. Um, my first year of grad school was my best. I think the best physical shape I've ever been in, and I think at that point, like I like worked with Kaylee to like write these workouts, and I was doing the workouts. I was training speed a lot, just because like I didn't have that many friends yet, and uh, and it was really easy for me to get into this like very consistent schedule where I'd get in the gym and just get the job.
Yeah.
And so I think the best scores I've been able to get, like I know I'm pretty sure I got over 500 in a practice,
Hmm.
and
In 3 minutes.
um, 3 minute speed
Hmm.
over 500. And I think my fastest I've been actually was this past year in December. I think I got it was I don't know if they clicked 103 or 104 in 30 seconds, but that's probably the fastest I've ever
Mm,
done. And that was interesting because I was training speed in Ghana at the time.
mm.
Um, I don't think I would have expected that, and especially because it was pretty last minute too. Speed's really interesting. I feel like I could talk about this.
Yeah, well, let's keep going because what I'm really curious about and kind of what prompted the question is I
Hmm.
want to pick apart your training during that period, and I'm curious now that you've said you were in Ghana, and we'll wrap around to that later because I want to
Hmm.
talk about that as well. But so you're in Ghana and you weren't expecting to do as well as you did. I'd like to pick apart that training, but I'd also like to talk about um, previously a time where you felt like you were absolutely destroying it with your practices in a good way,
Hmm.
but it sounds like it didn't necessarily pan out. So um,
Yes.
let's start with Ghana and then we'll work our way back.
Okay. Yeah, definitely work our way back because I have a good story for that where I learned a lot.
Cool, cool.
Um, I think so. What happened was I was in Ghana, and for my Archer Cornfield teaching fellowship where I was teaching engineering at a university there, and I'm living on campus, and campus is in like this pretty rural part of Ghana where the roads aren't that great. Um, aren't that great is probably an understatement. And so I'm on the campus, and like I teach, and I didn't really know anyone in the entire continent, and I'm with my roommate, and like so there's just not a lot to do, especially during the week when you can't really get off campus because again the roads are bad. So all I would do is like, okay, I teach, I go to the gym, I get my workout in, I go home, I continue whatever work I'm doing, and then go to sleep. And for the most part, it was just trying to maintain some level of fitness and really mental health. So I had my ropes, but most of my speed ropes are broken. I break my speed ropes really quickly.
Hmm.
So I don't usually train speed unless I'm preparing for competition.
Hmm.
And I was just kind of doing like freestyle stuff. There's no air conditioning, so I'm sweating super hot, like sweating a lot because it's also very humid and hot in the gym. And the gym floors are like super hard. So I think at the time I like was trying to do this belt full, crush my wrist. My wrist was like hurting for like months.
Dude,
So
that so real quick before you continue, so everyone has context about what you just said. A belch full, and if I'm understanding this correctly, if I'm not, correct
yeah.
me for sure. But you're in a handstand position.
Mhm.
You pop off of the ground, spin your body 360 degrees all the way around, and then land into a push-up.
Exactly.
Correct? So as you're transitioning from a handstand body position to a push-up body position, you are spinning your body 360 degrees. So what you're saying your injury came from you almost made it around, but instead you smashed your wrist into the ground.
Well, I made it all the way around and some. And so
Oh, and then you get a little
and so
more.
I landed
Okay.
with all my weight on one wrist. It's actually like the video of me smashing my wrist is posted on Instagram because I thought like, oh, like this didn't feel that great, but it's fine. I get up, I actually do it 2 more times before I stop because I wanted to get a better shot. And then I'm like, oh, no, this wasn't that okay. My wrist actually really hurts, and it's been
Yeah.
suffering for months.
It's funny you mentioned that. A couple weeks ago, actually, it's probably been a month and a half at this point. I was doing a double under push up kamikaze, and
Hmm.
I came down and like I jacked up my finger and it like hurt really bad, and I didn't realize until after I looked back at it. But basically, my one of my fingers on my right hand, my finger went down at the mat I was on, and then went sideways. And like, you know what I'm talking about? Where it just like, and it happens so fast. It's just like, bam. And so I got up and it hurt so bad. And I like, it was one of those things where I was like, like, cause sometimes that happens where like you hurt something, but then like 10 minutes later you go back and you're fine,
Exactly. Oh,
you
I just
know?
need to walk it off,
Yeah.
stomach it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then this time I went to go do another push up, and as soon as I landed on the ground, I looked down and like literally my finger was twice the size, and I was like, "Oh,
Oh my
well,
God.
that's probably a sprain." So I know what you're talking about.
It's
But
time. It's
yeah,
time to, yeah. And like, yeah, maybe I should, cool off on these tricks for a little bit.
yeah. Well, then it's annoying because then you can't do those tricks for a while because you have to rest.
Yep. And the worst part is that, I mean, especially with the belt full, I've never been able to get it consistently because what happens is I'll start training it, I'll get it pretty good, and then at some point I'll do it where I hurt my wrist, and it's like
Mm,
it's over. And so there's a lot of tricks in my that I'd like to like master, that I just have never been able to master for years, just because they're so destructive that
yeah.
it's really hard to rep it enough to master it.
Do you feel like for the belch full specifically, like, and I've not done that skill, but I'm just kind of thinking it through. Do you
Hmm.
like put your hands into a fist when you land to like avoid destroying your fingers, or do you just kind of go for it?
Yeah, I just kind of go for it.
Yeah.
I think the key for that one is to get the whatever leg is coming under. So like what I do is I'll split my legs apart and then I'll bring them around each other in a circle to like generate the twist you need to go into the push up. And as long as you can kick your leg around enough so that you get some lift before you push off with your arms, you'll complete the trick without that much effort. But the key is to dial in the right amount of effort from your arms and your legs so that you like
Gotcha.
rotate enough. But what I've learned is that you can't over rotate either, because that that sucks.
Yeah.
So, but I think, yeah, in my head, I think I understand the technicality of that particular skill now. But it's just a matter of like, doing it again, and then what I'm also learning is training it with the right equipment. Um, so you want to land on forgiving surfaces so that you don't bust your wrist up the next time you try
Hmm.
it.
What other skills have eluded you?
Um, Moneymaker is one. Like I'll
Mm.
get it. I hate that skill so much. Like I hate it. I hate it. It's so cool, and there's been moments where I do it really well, and then it eludes me again because it's so sensitive to like I guess my power to weight ratio. I have to be strong enough and have a good enough form to like pull it around. So I guess for people listening, the moneymaker is when you start on your hands in like a frog or handstand. You push off with your arms. You bring the rope around you, so around your legs, and you land back in the handstand before you complete the frog skill. It's really hard. Nick Woodard, invented it a few years ago based on a bet with Sean Hamilton. That's why it's called the Moneymaker. I think you won $100. Um, $100 is um, not enough money for that skill.
Yeah, I was gonna say that skill is so difficult, and it seems. Do you when you approach it now?
Hmm.
I always have, I have respect for all Moneymaker skills, obviously, but I have a special respect for Nick's style of doing it because it seems like a lot of folks now approach it using a block like they would for a front handspring, whereas Nick looks
Hmm.
like he straight up powers through it.
Yeah.
How do you approach it?
Yeah. I think I, I would argue that the best technique I've seen for a moneymaker ever, I think is worth studying is probably Hamisi. Because I mean, if you ever watch this dude do his moneymaker, he goes straight up and down. He does not move
Mm,
forward at all. And where one side of the spectrum is Nick, where if you look at the very first moneymaker video, it's completely arms. His legs
hmm.
do nothing, and
Yeah, which is
that's why it's
insane.
so hard for him to land it because he didn't use his legs at all. Whereas in a lot of other people's moneymakers today, they use the blocking technique, which I get, and then they'll also, I mean, a lot more legs. So you have these people traveling forward quite a bit. Their legs use a lot of it to get around. But then you have this nice sweet spot, which is Hamisi,
Hmm.
where he's using his arms to get himself up, but he's using his legs as well to really get a lot of lift, and that's why like he's able to do more moneymaker skills than your average moneymaker jumper, right? There's probably what 20 people at this point. I don't know who can do
There's
moneymaker.
there's too many. it's
Yeah, there's a lot.
it's insane.
Yeah, and but then like there's very very few people who've ever done a moneymaker cross, moneymaker backward,
Hmm.
two in a row, right? And so getting the technique perfect, I think very few people have ever done, and I think I would argue Hamisi is one of the few people that's done it.
Yeah, he is such an interesting jumper because not only does he have an incredible amount of power, but his proficiency in all of his placements and in all of his skills is through the roof, especially given that there's different body types in jump rope, and Hamisi is definitely on the stockier side because he's built with muscle. And
Hmm.
you see him do, AS and CL and rap skills combined with other ones that you normally wouldn't see someone with that style completing. And he does it easily too, which is
Yep.
amazing.
Whew. I'm so glad you bring that up. Because it's important to remember for Hamisi, he started jumping rope in Tanzania, and his original teacher is Mike Fry, right?
Hmm.
And so when he first started, he did no flips, not really that much power. It was all rope manipulation because that's what Mike was teaching at the time. It wasn't until Hamisi moved to Washington, with the Kennedys and Hot Dog USA, that his like head coach is then Nick Woodard, where he now has the equipment to like master the flipping skills. He has another jump rope influence, Nick, and I think if you look at his style now, it's like a perfect blend of like Mike Fry's proficiency in
Hmm.
rope manipulation and releases and wraps with Nick Woodard's like all out power,
Hmm.
gymnastic proficiency, and then at the center of that, you get Hamisi.
It's funny. I've never thought of it that way, but that is extreme. Like I know the history, but I've never like connected it that way. And that's actually makes a lot of sense. So now we know the best form of coaching for jump rope is to make Mike Fry and Nick put them together with an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, if you can internalize everything they're teaching, and I'm not sure if most students can,
Yeah, for real.
but if you combine, yeah, Mike and Nick, I guess their strong points, you're a pretty dangerous jumper.
Yeah. Let's go back to the speed training when you were in
Yes.
Ghana. So what you're talking about, you're basically, for all intents and purposes, you're kind of just doing work and jump rope at this
Yep.
point. What did that training look like?
Yeah. So in Ghana, most of my jumping was to just keep myself mentally available to continue my work, because you gotta remember I'm on a different continent. I don't know anyone there. The
Hmm.
work is actually very hard. I'm teaching a class of like 70 something students. I have one TA. I've never taught before. It's thermodynamics, which is kind of a challenging topic.
Yeah.
And so the amount of work I had to do was phenomenal. I'm working through the weekends as well.
Hmm.
And then I'm also dealing with, aside from not being physically near anyone close to me, there's also some infrastructural challenges that come along with being on the continent, such as like, intermittent water. It was pretty dry when I was there, so water would run out pretty frequently, which really sucks when you come back from your jump rope workout and you want to shower and it's just gone.
Oh,
Or
you're
like,
saying like, okay, so like all water, you're just that's it.
yeah, it's gone. I
Wow.
mean, sometimes you can get a bucket, but I remember there were some nights where it's just like, well, I guess I just dry off and go to
Yeah.
sleep.
Holy
It's terrible.
cow.
Um, so
After a speed workout or even just a full jumper, I cannot even imagine
yeah,
doing that.
I was livid. I was like, this is unacceptable. Even for like most people will at least take a bucket shower, and that's what I started to do. Um, so like the jump rope in that instance was mostly just like, and let me stay sane, let me work on some things, let me feel familiar and strong,
Mhm.
so I can keep going, because this is pushing me in every way possible. And then it wasn't until early November, so I've been there really since June, on and off for the most part.
June 2019.
Yeah, June 2019. I came back for a little bit in August, but I was back in Ghana, and it wasn't until like early November that I realized that maybe I can swing it such that I can attend the Common Skipper workshop, where Common Skippers are based in Mason, Ohio, which is right outside Cincinnati. That's my
Hmm.
home. And I was planning to go home anyway, and I was like, I think I can get it such that I can go to the workshop. And if I can go to the workshop, then I can compete at the qualifier for
Hmm.
AMJRF. And so I was like, okay, well that means I need to actually start training for competition. So I had about a month left, and I didn't feel like I was super in shape. I don't think I really touched my speed rope. So I was like, okay, well all I can do is, be consistent. I think at this point I had a better understanding of what it takes to get fast quickly.
Hmm.
And so for me, that was just like I put on my music playlist. I just do intervals of 100. So I just count to 100 jumps to the BPM, and I just make it progressively faster and faster until I'm training. I try and hit like, what I really want to be able to hit is like a 120 BPM. Um, and so like that'll be like 120, I guess, speed jumps in 30 seconds. It's really, really hard. But I work myself up to like getting as close to that as possible for as long as possible.
Hmm.
And I just do that over and over again. And it was a lot of fun. I sweat a lot. And it eventually got me to the point where I got that 104 score, when I did compete, which is the fastest I've ever been.
Interesting. So your technique to get maximum results in the least amount of time was actually not to force yourself to be disciplined and not force yourself to do these sucky workouts, but just to do the least cognitive strain approach, which was to pair it with music that you knew
Hmm.
matched your pace. What did you do? Did you have sessions where the ones that failed, and I'm going to use that term failure very loosely because you're still there practicing, so it is kind of it is a success, but the ones that failed that you did not, I'm assuming there were some where you did not keep the pace.
Hmm.
What did you do? Because you're listening to this music, do you go for as long as you can, you hit that 100, you stop, and then you just reset the song and go again? Is that how that worked?
No. So like I have like a playlist of music with at varying BPMs, and
Mhm.
usually what I'm doing is there's ones I know I'll hit, right? If it's like a 86 pace, 90
Right.
pace,
Right.
I'm gonna get to 100, and that's just to warm up, or I might even just go to 50. And then I didn't really go for like 105 or more, the all out 100 session. I would argue I probably didn't do that at all.
Hmm.
I think for the most part, it was just trying to get myself to go faster and faster and faster for as much as I can. So I try to get to like 50, for at the 100 pace, but I'll do
Hmm.
that several times.
Hmm.
Or I might get to 50, 50 jumps with a 110 BPM. And, if I can get that, that's going to be really good.
Right.
Or can I just get to 15 on the 120, please? If I could do that, I'm going to feel really good about that.
And you're saying getting to that number before you miss? Like
So
just
when
holding
I'm
it, or what is the qualifier? Because you're not doing you're not technically running like a time, right? You're just trying to
Mhm.
match the pace. So when you say you're trying to get to 15 or get to 50, is that hitting that number before you miss on the rope?
Yeah, so it's like hitting that number with the BPM without missing.
Okay.
And usually if I'm like straining myself too much, one, I'll like slow down before I hit the number.
Mm-hmm.
Or two, I'll mess up. And if I mess up, it doesn't count. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
say like I need to reach this many times and before I move on to the next song. And usually that's how I would go about it.
How many times is that, like 10 or 20 times before you move on, hitting it clean?
Yeah, I think probably not that much. I think I'll probably warm up. Um, Maybe with a few 50s at different BPMs, I slowly get faster. I
Mm-hmm.
think once I start reaching the 100, I might hit 50 like three times before I move on to 105, get 150, 110, get 30 or 40 three times, right? And the goal is to slowly allow myself to get faster and faster. I think before I was worried about um,
Balls to the wall, just hit that speed, make sure you crush it, and then that's
yeah, and just
that.
kind of
Yeah.
hold on for dear life until the end. And but I guess the focus was on endurance, and then I think I've switched my perspective. I think the focus should be on being as fast as I possibly can, because if you can do 50 jumps at 120 BPM, doing 100 jumps at 100 BPM is trivial, right? And so I focus more on how fast can I go as fast as possible, more so than how long can I hold this pace. Because also when you're doing the interval training, you're inherently training your endurance, right? So like I'm not taking huge breaks between these
Gotcha.
jumps. I'm like waiting for the chorus to end and I get back into it. And so in that way, I'm like inherently training my endurance, but really I'm focusing on um, just like how fast can I go?
Yeah, but in that, okay, so that's the piece I was missing. That makes a lot more sense now, because when you're saying you're not taking a lot of rest, to me that translates to your heart rate is not lowering drastically, so
Hmm.
you are keeping it, it sounds like you're keeping it at least 70 to 80% max heart rate the whole time, which means you're in a medium endurance state for all intents and
Yeah,
purposes. I mean, obviously, it would have to be exactly measured to give an exact answer, but it sounds like that's the case, which means you are training for those events, and it is actually not. It's cognitively different, but like physically, it's not.
right.
So that, and I would imagine your session, like you're saying, your sessions are 30 minutes plus of doing that.
For the speed part, yes.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, that makes a
yeah.
lot of sense, because if you're doing those intervals for 30 minutes, a 3 minute bout is going to be still tough, but not nearly the same level of intensity. That is for sure.
Right. And I hate taking breaks. I don't take breaks between lifting weights either. So I'll like lift and then I'll just go to the next thing and get my reps in and just keep it pushing. Because I do like to like try and keep my heart elevated throughout the entire workout.
Hey, before you go, I just wanted to say one last thing. One of my main goals for this podcast is to share the stories, of other jumpers and provide a full picture about everything that's possible with the jump rope. The more people that hear this, the better. And it would really help me out if you sent this podcast to somebody you know, whether in real life or digitally on Instagram, Facebook, whatever platform you use. It would mean the world to me. So that's it. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, lunch, evening, whatever time it is for you right now. See you later.